Okay, this is the next project here. I believe this is a 2010 Victory Vision. This is a Arlen Ness special. And as you can see, Arlen did his deal on the paint, which looks pretty cool. The engine's been dressed up here a little bit. As you can see, there's some machine work on the fins. And very nice looking machine, very good shape. This one's going to be kind of a challenge in a way because we're going to have to blend the front end. You know, this is my typical design here, which is a little bit more straight. This one's going to end up curved, so it blends in with the rear there, and that flow just kind of carries over onto the front end. So I got to work on some artistic work there. This should be the most unusual build I have done so far. So I'm pretty anxious to get going on this thing. This is going to be fun. As far as attachment, that's not an issue. I checked these out before. I won't have any trouble with getting the frame secured on there. As far as airflow, it's going to be really good. This opening here forms a natural wind tunnel, so I won't have any trouble ducting air into the engine. There will be a fan in here. One thing that's going to be kind of neat on this, and I didn't tell the owner this yet, I'll have to break the news to him. He gets to test out my new reverse gear setup for reverse trikes. I have a patent pending design, and we're going to put it on this bike and have him test it for me and give me updates on what needs to be adjusted or fixed or what he likes, doesn't like. But he's getting the reverse for free just because he gets to test it out. So that's a real bonus for him. So he should be pretty happy when I talk to him about that one. But we'll be getting going with this one here. I'm going on vacation. So when I get back from vacation, I'm going to attack this pretty steady and hopefully get it done for him so we can get some decent riding in this year. So I'll be doing a video step by step on this one, and any kind of issues I run into or trials and tribulations, and we'll keep you posted on that. Okay, part two of the Victory here, and I've got some progress done. I didn't work on it too much. I had a lot of things going on. We're actually leaving on vacation, so this is about as far as I'm going to get before we leave. But I did get a couple fenders, and as you can see, there's the fender. It's a front fender off of a Yamaha Venture, and it's got the little slope back. What I'll do with these, I've got two of them. I'm going to cut them down the middle and widen them out 1.5 inches, and kind of modify them so they'll fit on here. But the design is nice because it's got the same basic lines as the bike has, so it's going to blend in really, really nice. A couple things on these. You know, you learn every time you get into one of these things how manufacturers think. As you can see, the battery is right there. I think what I'm actually going to do is build a battery box in the front frame and move that battery up ahead, so that it's easy for the owner to get at it. This is kind of a difficult spot, even as a stock bike, to get at that battery. It's you got to pull the front wheel off to get at it, really. So I'm going to relocate it about a foot or so ahead of where it is now, so the owner can just reach in and loosen one bolt and pull that battery right out of there. This does have link brakes. I've got the brakes out of there. As you can see, lots and lots of hoses. And the way they work is they've got this little balance valve right here, and on each caliper, one of the pistons on each caliper runs with the foot lever, and the other two on each caliper run with the hand lever. So that way you've got a linked system where the hand grip actually runs the front brakes, and the foot pedal runs front and rear. And it's kind of a little bit different. Like the Goldwings, the hand lever runs both, and the foot runs both. And their system is it's kind of goofy in a way. It's got two masters. One runs on the left disc, and it's kind of a problematic thing. There's a big brake recall on it because that secondary master doesn't return to normal, and the brake pressure builds up, and there's been a couple fires and all kinds of things. So it's not a real good design. This is much better. The foot pedal runs both, the hand runs only the front. I think that's a little more natural for one thing. But I have to delink them because I can't get the brakes balanced properly, and it's kind of a danger thing. So the hand lever on my systems always run the front wheels, and the foot pedal runs the rear. And to bypass this was easy because they just hook in right here. There's this one here goes to the back caliper. This one went to the front pair. So all I had to do is put a bushing in there with a couple copper washers to make sure that it seals good. And it was a 2-minute bypass. So this one's all ready to go. I've got the fork tubes out of there, as you can see. And I got to make a couple little short tubes that fit in there, and that's going to drive the steering system. And other than that, it's looking really good. So I got these parts here. I didn't take off too much, just that. And I've got the wheel over here, and the shock tubes. And one thing I did notice on this is this one disc, must be this side, is actually really loose. It moves up and down quite a bit. I'd say a good 1/16 of an inch. And typically those things are supposed to move, but not that easily. And I don't think it really caused a problem here, except it would be noisy. You'd hear that thing chattering going down the road. So that was the first time I ever came across that system. But anyway, this is where I start. And at this point, next time I attack this thing, I'll be adding the frame section to the front, and we'll go from there. But at this point, it's going really well. It's no surprises. I've got a couple good ideas on how to make life easier for the owner, so that's always good. So anyway, part 2 is done. I guess one more thing I should mention here, if you see these aluminum sides here, and there's a hose right there that's upside down that says caution fuel, the gas tanks are on the side. These are actually, this is a gas tank on this side, and yeah, they're all aluminum gas tanks. And it's mounted in the fairing, which is kind of different. The battery was kind of a chore to get out of there. I did get it out. It's sitting right here. I'm going to extend those cables. I've got plenty of areas up front here, and I'm going to rig it up so that I'm going to use the existing cradle there, and one bolt and the thing will slide right out, and I'm going to make it really easy for maintenance. And it kind of opens up the front of the engine compartment here so we can get a little better airflow in here. So I think that's going to work out much better. So I guess this part's done, and we'll move on to actually construction on the next phase. Of the Victory Vision build. And as you can see, the framing is basically done. I just got the anti-sway bar in there. I did make a change on the last bike where I actually, this mounting used to go straight in line with this. Now it actually turns at a slight angle, which increases the range of movement to 360 degrees, where before it was limited to about 20 degrees. And I never had a problem, but I thought, you know, if we run into putting in longer shocks with more travel, they could bind up, so I went with this route. And the only side effect to it was it does impart a slight turning motion on these uprights here, so I put a lock nut on it now. And so, you know, you fix one thing and another thing creeps up. So I just added a lock nut, and that took care of that. I'm waiting for the rims to come in so I can machine the hubs to fit, because I have to I custom fit the rotors. The rotors are sitting right there, and I actually sculptured this end here to match the rim hole, so it's a interference fit, and it ensures that the rotors are going to fit 100%, and there'll be no run out or anything like that. So this is all ready to go, and I believe the rims are going to show up tomorrow. I did run into you know, some logistics here. As you see, the fan is in there, but I had to move the fan up tight to the front, and in fact the steering shaft here just touches the housing, and the battery is going to go right where it is there. and I got to extend the cables across, and it's actually going to be raised up about a ½ inch because the brake line goes underneath that. And so the little storage tray in here is going to have a little bit of a narrow side on it to compensate for the battery, so you have to kind of sacrifice something. But the battery was mounted way back there in front of the exhaust pipe on the engine, which is just a horrible placement regardless. And this is going to make it a lot easier to service. The pan just pulls right out of here, the storage bin, and so you can put jumper cables on it. It'll be really easy to remove the battery, replace it, whatever. You know, so there was a little thought that went into relocation there, but that's going to work out really well. I got a video here where I talked a little bit about cotter keys, which is kind of a crazy thing to talk about, but I have to because it kind of came up here lately. These bolts that I use right here are slightly larger than the ones on the outside tie rod end, and it's because the tie rod ends actually do have a different size hole. So in order to get a nice fit, I go to a slightly larger diameter bolt there, and they just happen to have a hole. You can't really see it here. There's a hole in here at the end of the bolt, and I had a guy put cotter keys in there, which you absolutely do not want to do. If you look at how this thing moves, if you put a cotter key in there, it could snag on that brake fitting there. If something got underneath here, maybe an article of clothing or a rag or something laying on the road, it could jump up in there, snag on those cotter keys, and catch on something and actually impair the movement of the steering column, which would be a disaster. So you absolutely do not want to put any cotter keys anywhere on here. Even on here, I don't put cotter keys in here. This nut is actually tightened down to about 110 foot-pounds, and those are tapered. The ball joints actually have a taper to them. Once you get these things tightened, you actually have to use a pickle fork to tear them apart. So there's absolutely no reason those would ever come loose. So I don't put the cotter keys in here. And these are actually kind of they're not really designed for this. Obviously, everything about this is custom. So, you know, the cotter key doesn't make any sense. You know, there's no cotter keys anywhere. It's either Loctite or, like in here, those are all lockable nuts. And so I use lock nuts and everything, and like I was pointing to these here, these are actually lock nuts on here too. And you know, if I thought there was a risk that they could come loose, I would certainly take care of it. But it turns out to be more of a problem by putting them in there. They snag on everything. You go to clean anything, and the first thing that happens is you cut your hands, and it's been nothing but a problem putting cotter keys in these things. So the only place I really put a cotter key is when I attach the hub. There's a cotter key that holds the nut on, and that really has to be there because there's no other way of fastening that where it won't turn. So just a word to the wise, if you see you know, the hole here and you're wondering why isn't there a cotter key in there, well, it's because that's by design. So anyway, everything looking really good here. The frame, I've got some really good attachment on here. So structurally, I think we're looking at about 60,000 pounds of adherence there, which is way over the limit. So we're good that way. I just finished the tie rods on here. I actually make those from scratch. And aside from having the wheels on here, it's pretty much done as far as the structural part. I've got a lot of wiring. I had to make some adjustments in the frame here. These bottom members are about 4 inches off the bottom. This one's going to actually have a reversing setup in it, and it actually sits right here in this area. And so I had to make a lot of, that's why the fan is moved up as far forward as I can, because the actuator motor and everything sits behind the fan. And so there was a lot of head scratching that was involved in this, but it looks like everything's going to fit together pretty well. And my painter's actually got one of the side covers. As you can see, the flames on here. Arlen Ness did this, and you know, he's got his artistic flair. So I've got my painter, I took one of the side covers off on the other side of the saddlebag, and Harry's got that. He's going to try to match the flames. And we had a little debate on where we should put flames and stuff. And we're thinking maybe just the fenders. the front of the fenders, and we're going to leave this whole section, when I get the cowling and everything on here, will just be black. We're afraid if we put flames on that, it's going to be overkill, and the bike is just not going to really flow real nicely. So we're gonna probably think about that some more, but right now we're looking at just doing the fenders. And looks like probably about Wednesday I'm going to start doing the body panels on this, and hopefully by the weekend I'll have it ready for paint. And this one's going to be a little different. I think I might actually take the whole bike over to Harry's, and we'll see what he says. I might have to leave the bike with him when he paints it so we can get everything to blend. But if we're doing just the fenders, probably not. So that means while he's painting, I can work on the reverse setup and all the wiring. There'll be quite a bit of electrical stuff to do on this one. So anyway, it's looking good. And so far, no disasters. So, you know, that's what you always try to avoid, is any kind of problem. And if I see anything that looks like it could be a problem in the future, we redo it. I did actually have a problem with one of the tie rods where the threads didn't seem to thread quite right, so I ended up throwing one of the tie rods away and building a brand new one. And you know, in the long run, that's what you want to do, because you don't want something to come back and bite you. So right now I will get a little side view of it, and then I'm going to sign off here. But as you can see, it's starting to look like that thing in front belongs there. So that's the whole goal. So I'll do another video here continuing this when we you know, get some design work done. I want to probably lay it out with paper, and then once I'm satisfied with what that looks like and the owner is satisfied, then we're going to go ahead and convert it to sheet metal. Okay, progress video on the Victory here, the Victory Vision. Looks like it's ready to go on the road. It's actually drivable right now. I've got the brakes hooked up, they're bled out, everything worked out real good. Wheels are on. We'll get a side view here, what you can see. So it's looking pretty fancy schmancy, I guess. And yeah, everything's working out really good here. I've got the battery relocated. I've built a little bracket to hold it in place. There's like a 1/4-inch space there, so I'm gonna have to make sure I add a little space of that and get that bracket powder coated tomorrow. But other than that, that's all done. Fan is in, and some other doodads in there. Everything's basically set. The anti-dive bar there, the anti-sway bar, that's all done, and it's looking good. So tomorrow I'm actually gonna build the little side frames and start working on the design for the panels. And I've got some ideas. We'll see how they work out when I actually try to implement those. I've got the fenders. They're sitting over there on the floor. You can see they're stacked on top of each other. And I'm going to be cutting those down the middle and widening them out. And you know, that should look pretty good on here, I think. I've got a little different design. The rotors I'm using, the spindle sets, are just a little different than what I've used in the past. So I have to build some different fender brackets. But I like the way these are going to set up. I think the brackets are going to be much sturdier, and should work out really good with these fenders. So anyway, it's coming right along, and we'll keep you up to date as things change. We're trying to back up here and get a little bit better shot of the front. And I even have the toe and everything all set. And it's rough set. I take it out for a drive, see if the handlebars are straight. And if they aren't, then I adjust it, and then I do the final on that. But other than that, it's ready to go down the road for a test run. Okay, real quick video here on the progress. I spent all day Friday working on 2 fenders. It was quite a project, but it's looking good. As you can see, there's the Yamaha Royal Star fenders, and they conform pretty nicely to the lines of the bike. And you can see here where the shock depression has been tapped out and flush. I've got a little bit of trim work to do on getting the contour of the the spacing between the rim edge and the fender there, so it's nice and uniform. But other than that, these are pretty well done. They've been widened out about 1.25 inches. You can see I cut them in half, and then I welded a band in there. I spot weld that, and then I TIG weld it to make sure that it doesn't move around and fracture the paint. And Harry will fill that in with probably body filler, and then he fiberglasses over the top, and then he'll put a little bit of a round top edge to it. So when he gets all done, you can't even tell they've ever been touched. The biggest problem with this, as far as time, was not so much the widening of the fender, but building these braces. Structurally, they have to be really strong because the fender hangs off one side. So that's all a 1/4 inch thick plate, as you can see here. In fact, here's one without the fender. The other part of this is, too, that I have to take them off in order to powder coat them, so it has to be built as 2 pieces. And I use stainless steel screws there to hold the bottom plate. It's actually anchored to the top ball joint, and those ball joints are, as I mentioned in the previous video, are torqued down to about 120 foot-pounds, so they're on there good and tight. So once this is all put together, that bracket's not going to move and it's not going to flex, and you can see it's got a pretty healthy dimension. It's held on there. Here I've got with the 1 screw holding it on, but there's actually 3 that go in there, so it's a 3-piece mounting. I've got one fender here on the floor, which I'll flip over. And there you go. As you can see, I have to actually put in some straps in there. Those are all those are 1/4 inch by inch and I believe 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. Those are welded in there. There's also some body panel adhesive used. So they actually add, some structural integrity to the fender, so we don't end up with the fender cracking. And that's a big concern too down the road. So I'm going to have to put some sealant in there, and the inside of these fenders are going to be all rubber coated so that they don't rust, and that rock chips and that kind of thing don't affect them. So anyway, that was the progress for one day. Today I'm going to do get started on the shell and get that part going. And I think the fenders are going to go to the painters today yet, and he's got to do the flames on that. We're actually going to put the flames right along this edge here, where this white line is, which will no longer exist, but that's where the flames are going to go. So, and we're actually going to try to match that flame there and just transpose it down here. And I think that's going to bring it all together real nicely. And like I say, I don't think we're going to do anything on the cowling because it's going to be overkill, and the lines are going to be different, and I think it's going to look like it's an afterthought. So we're going to go kind of simple with the flames, but enough to really blend it together. And that's the plan. So we'll see how we do today. Okay, another day, and this one side panel took about 5 hours to do this one, and this one over here took about an hour. So the first one always is tough, the second one not so much. You can't probably see this, but where the metal touches the bike there's exactly an 1/8 inch space all the way along there. And I put black duct tape on the bike so I don't scratch it. So if you see this, it looks like it's marred, that's actually the duct tape there. And I kind of went with a modified standard profile on this part of it, and you can see from the side here, it doesn't quite blend. The bottom does. It's got the flow there. The top, there's actually a hood and kind of a bonnet that's going to go in here. That's going to finish off the look, and it's also going to be louvered so it'll let air in, and we got to get air into the engine. So it's either going to be louvered or it's going to be a mesh design, and I'm going to work on that tomorrow. And I think I can get it to fit the rounded shape and get the flow of the top of the thing to match. The bottom looks pretty good, so I think the top is going to be pretty easy. I think I can get that done in pretty short order. So once that's done, then it cruises right along. So I'll have it to the painter probably end of the week, and next week can get it done, and then we'll be ready for just the finishing touches here. So doesn't look like much, but that was a day's work. And this is kind of why nobody else really does these bikes. Nobody will do all the different brands I do. I'm the only guy in the country that actually will do any bike, and it's time consuming, and you have to hand tailor every single one. But every one is kind of its own art project, and this will be the only bike like it in the world when I'm done. And I got the fenders down here. Those are going to the painter tomorrow. And you can see I've got the internal bracing, and I sealed off everything. And I'm going to rubber coat the inside of those right now, and then that's going over to the painter tomorrow. But it's looking good. Things keep progressing. It's slow going on this one, much slower than builds I've done in the past. But it's one of those deals. It takes more time, but when you get done with it, you have a product that's better than whatever anybody else came up with. So I think the owner is going to be real happy with it, and I hope he appreciates all the progress so far. So that'll be it for this segment. Okay, better progress today. I actually got quite a bit done. The hood, as you can see, is kind of rough together. This actually has kind of a steep slope and a sharp edge here. We're going to lay some fiberglass in here and get this rounded off, unless Harry wants me to do it with sheet metal. But I don't like this straight up and down here, so we're actually going to put a big arc in here. And I might actually have to lay another piece of sheet metal in there to do that transition. On the grill, kind of went a little fancy there. Tried to sculpture the grill to match the headlight, and still managed to get lots of air going through there. And the hood ended up really flat. I didn't like the flat hood, so I'm adding these two bars on there to kind of break it up and give it a little dimension. I'm not real sure if I like this yet, the shape of the front here. My next thing I'm going to do here is the grill, and when I get going on that, I'll make a determination on what looks the best as far as the front there. But it's coming along pretty good. This does open up, and as you can see, there's quite a bit of work getting these side inner fender parts here done. And I just put the hood on here, so it's just rough together for now. There. So there's some bracing that has to go in there, and it all has to be kind of trimmed out, and it's got to be straightened a little bit, and it's got to be tweaked around a little bit. But I'm pretty happy with it. As you can see back here, it kind of the shape kind of blends in with the bike. It's got the same arc as the rest of the bike, so it kind of flows through, and that's what I was really looking for. And at the same time, we got to get air in there, and managed to do that too. So I think there's a little cosmetic work that has to be done, but it's coming along pretty good. Okay, this is probably the last video prior to this going to the paint shop. As you can see, it's pretty well put together. I've got, the fenders are done, the body panels are all done, and I've got some minor stuff to do on them, not a lot. I did add a couple ribs to the top to kind of break up that flat look. I didn't really like that. The upper grill there kind of conforms to the light, and I think that worked out really good. We got the wink lights in there, and I went with the honeycomb grid pattern on this one because it seems to blend in better with this bike. And then I added these extra pieces of sheet metal on the side, which kind of got rid of that square choppy look. And then Harry's going to actually kind of contour that a little bit with some fiberglass cloth and get that looking a little bit nicer. But it blends in pretty well. I think it's going to work out real nice. And it's going to have a really large storage tray in there, which is good because the battery is going to take up some of it. And you know, once it's all black and everything and it blends together and we've got the flames on the fenders and all that, I think it's all going to pull together pretty nice. And along with that, I think we're going to get decent airflow. We've got plenty of air coming in the top, and that's where we're going to need it. On the bottom, the fan will be running, so that'll take care of any heat for the lower part of the engine and for the oil cooler. But right now it's looking really good. And as you can see, the body panels will blend right into the rest of the bike. There's about a 1/8 inch gap between the addition there and the bike itself. So I'm going to put a rubber edge on that, so when we get it all done, it's all going to fit real nice. And a lot of work. This thing took a lot more effort than most of them, but you know, it's worth it. I get a lot of enjoyment out of coming up with these special designs. And the hood here, I kind of stayed with the original little design I had to start with because it matches the headlight. And this whole thing opens up, so you can see it's going to have a pretty good storage area in there. And so I'll have to build kind of a custom deal for that. So anyway, I got a little bit of work to do on it to just mainly weatherproofing it, and then it goes to the paint shop. So next week, this is going to be in the paint shop, and hopefully a couple days. Well, Harry might take a week because it's a little more involved, and whatever it takes, I guess we just want to get it done right. So while he's doing that, I got to put a car tire on the back and a couple things on the bike, and I'm going to work on the reversing system. So I got plenty of stuff to do while he's tinkering on the rest of it here. So we'll probably do a video at the end when it's all put together after I test drive it and we get some pictures outside. Okay, just a real quick video here on the finale of the Victory Vision. I just picked up the fenders. I had to take them in and get them professionally pinstriped. My painter did the flames and everything, but he didn't feel comfortable doing the hand pinstriping, so I had an artist do that part for us. And as you can see, everything blends in really well. The flames are just enough to accent but not overwhelm. And the bike is completely done. The only thing I have left is I have to take it and wash it really good. It's got fingerprints and stuff all over it. As you can see, the body turned out real well. Got the ribs up front, and we went with the bed liner up the center of the hood, so it kind of blends in with the grill and everything, and the wink lights. All that's all coordinated. And I'm going to go ahead and turn the key on here. And as you can see, there's some extra lighting. We've got the lights along the edges of the hood, and the wink lights, of course. And I don't know if you can see the little amber eyebrows around the lights down there, but it should be pretty classy at night. It's going to really stand out. And Harry did a really good job on the fenders. You can't even tell they've been widened. And if you look at the previous videos, you'll see how we did that. And you can hear the fan running. So there's a fan that turns on as soon as you turn the ignition on. And that part works really well. It blows directly on the oil cooler, which is mounted right there, and cools the engine, and everything looks really good. So this one is complete. I've got a couple Harleys coming in next. We'll see what we can do with those. But this is probably the most extensive build to date. This is, I think, number 34 for me, if I don't include the 4 that I built for myself, and the multiple rebuilds on those. But this was the most difficult, but I think the most elaborate as far as how it turned out and everything. And the body style is kind of different, but I got a really good fit there. There's only an 1/8 of an inch gap between the cowling and the bike itself, so everything is like what I anticipated. It should all look like it's part of the bike, and it was designed from the factory this way. So it's looking good.